Welcome to Draw This. Draw This is a series of videos where I'll draw something random for you and describe my process so that you, the viewer, can follow along. So we're going to be drawing a giant spider sitting next to a fire reading a book, and I got this idea from the art idea generator on somecallmebeth.com. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so I'm here inside of Corel Painter 2015, and I've assembled a few layers here. I'm going to break it down for you. I have the sketches group, which is a whole bunch of different sketches, and what I started with was just a very rough sketch of this chair that I wanted and a fireplace. Now, I didn't worry about getting it exactly in proportion, but what I wanted to do is make sure that the diagonal angles that I used all stayed the same. So I really just copied and pasted the same line here over my sketch to just show how the angles should be. And the fireplace doesn't matter too much because it's just going to be kind of straight on. After I did that, I drew some more guides for my vertical and horizontal lines just to make sure that those are all straight. Again, I'm just following over this rough drawing that I did that I just kind of visualized in my imagination, and I'm conforming it into a certain perspective by adding these guides. So then I did a refined sketch over that. So if I turn off these guides and if I turn off this mask, you can see here's the refined sketch of the chair, which now looks more in perspective. It might not be exactly perfect, but it's a lot better than the rough sketch I did. The reason why I have this mask here is because I'm going to mask this a little bit later. So I'm adding a rough sketch for the spider. Just a really quick stick spider here, like you would do a stick person, just to get an idea of where you want everything to be. And then I did a refined sketch over that. So if we combine the two, and we put the mask back on, you can see that's what I use the mask for, is just to erase behind the spider without actually erasing the chair, just in case I am not happy with something and I don't want to have to redraw that chair again. Using the eraser would be destructive, using a mask would be non-destructive, so it's always better to be non-destructive when possible. And we don't have to stick with exactly what we have here. This is still kind of a sketch because we're going to ink over this and make it nice and perfect looking. I'm going to go for kind of like a Funny Pages, Sunday Comics kind of style here with ink and kind of a halftone fill. It's going to be all in black and white. So we have an idea of what we want to sketch here. So on those sketch layers, I'm just going to turn the opacity way down so that it's easier to see what I'm doing, to something like that. And then I'm going to go to this ink layer that I created. It's above all of the sketch layers. I'm going to use black. And I'm going to use this new variant I made called Rough Ink. And this is kind of just a variant of the Jitter Scratchboard tool, except it's meant to be used at a smaller diameter, so you get more of a proper variance in your line. So it's just kind of a wavy line rather than a perfectly straight line, like you would get with the Scratchboard tool. If I show you the Scratchboard tool, especially if I do a straight line, it's just too perfect. If I do a straight line with the Rough Ink, there's a little bit of ripple in it, especially if I zoom in here, you can see that. So let's go ahead and start inking. We just want to ink over everything, and we want to keep a consistent line width. So I'm going to stick with 5 here and make sure that I don't change it, and I want to make sure that I use a pretty consistent pressure to make sure that that line width stays at 5 and doesn't go much below it. And I'm going to zoom in pretty close here so that I can see what I'm doing and make sure that my lines are nice and smooth. Now, I'm drawing on a Wacom Cintiq 24 HD, so I have a lot of room to gesture with my arm. I can really move my hand around. If you're using a smaller tablet, you may need to zoom in a little bit further to be able to draw smoother lines. Because being able to move your arm really helps you get more fluid lines. So with that brush, I'm just going to go ahead and start inking here. And I kind of feel like starting up here, so that's where I'm going to go. I don't really have to start in any particular area here since I've already established where everything is with my sketch. Everything else can just kind of follow in whichever order I feel like placing it. I'm going to start with these eyes here. So I like to start with the main focal point of the piece generally if I'm picking a subject to start with. And since that's going to be the spider, I'll go ahead and start with her. I'm going to time-lapse a little bit here so you don't have to listen to me ramble for the next 30 minutes while I ink this, and then we'll catch up when we go to do the next step. Okay, so I have my inking done. We can go ahead and start adding the fills for the other shades of gray that we're going to put in here. So to do that, we're going to put that all on its own layer. This is going to be called Halftone, which is the technical term for that process of making little dots that make up patterns and also shades of gray. So really all you have to do is just go ahead and paint with the scratchboard tool and go ahead and just fill in anywhere, any colors that you want to add. I'm just going to stick to all these gray colors here. You can pick from these swatches or you can pick your own. Just make sure that you use only gray. When you start getting really close to white or to black, just go ahead and use white or black. So your range you want to be kind of in here, because otherwise the halftone pattern doesn't work so well on these dark and light areas. So I'm just going to start filling in. I'm going to do a time lapse and then I'll catch up with you after I've filled in all of these areas with gray. Okay, so now that we have all of our gray fills colored in, let's just make sure the halftone layer is selected. Go to Effects and Esoterica, Pop Art Fill. And you'll have to play around with this setting depending on which resolution you've used. I find that a contrast of 100 and a scale of 25 works pretty well for this piece. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and look at the result, and I think that looks pretty good. So now the last thing that we'll do is we will shrink this down just a bit and put a nice border around it to help it look more like a Sunday cartoon. So we'll go ahead and just delete our sketches because we don't need those anymore. And then we want to group the ink and halftone layers together. You can just call it art or whatever you want. And then we'll go ahead and free transform and scale these layers down. You want to hold shift while you do it. That way everything won't get squished. Put it right around here. We'll create a new layer called border. And we'll use black with that same rough ink scratchboard tool set to 5. And we'll hold shift on the keyboard to sketch in just a quick border that we can always go and clean up when we're done. Using the eraser, I'm going to hit N on my keyboard for the eraser, and I'm just going to go in and erase some of that border. It's okay if you don't get it perfect, because they are like that sometimes in the comics. And if you wanted to, you could also sign it. Make a layer for signature. And I like to just use my initials. So there you go, that's how you can create a Sunday Funny Pages style piece of artwork pretty quickly and easily using Corel Painter. If you enjoyed this episode of Draw This, take a quick second to like this video and share it with your friends. And don't forget to click the subscribe button to see my latest videos as they're released. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Tuesday for a new episode of Draw This.